Visiting Cairo, former US President Jimmy Carter says that despite some irregularities, Egypt's elections were free and fair. Islamist parties look like they'll control 2/3 of the new parliament. Will the largest party, part of the Muslim Brotherhood, try to form a government? And if they do, can they solve the crisis in the country? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. The final set of results are still not in, but the outcome already seems clear. The Freedom and Justice Party, part of the Muslim Brotherhood, will be the biggest party in Egypt's new parliament. In a stunning victory for Islamist politicians, the Salafist al-Noor party will have the second largest number of seats. Egypt's ruling Supreme Council of the Armed Forces has renewed its pledge to hand over power to an elected civilian government by mid-2012. But activists who've taken to the streets over the last 11 months accuse the military of murdering protesters and want a speedy handover to civilian rule. The Muslim Brotherhood's political wing, the Freedom and Justice Party, may have won the vote, but they seem in no hurry to take power, and it's possible they will not, for now, replace the interim government appointed by the generals. Mike Hanna is in Cairo.
Egyptians welcoming an outside view of a new country in the making, and Jimmy Carter's belief that the success of Islamic movements like the Muslim Brotherhood should bolster the democratic process, not subvert it.
I would say that they have pledged to me and to the public, to the world, that they will take an objective point of view, the Muslim Brotherhood, and that they will govern as one of the major parties in the new parliament in a balanced way and respect the human rights of others who might have a different approach to religion.
And a position taken in the debate about the motives of the Supreme Council of Armed Forces, SCAF, Carter's opinion that the army will carry through its pledge and hand over power.
My conclusion at this point, in all the meetings we've had, is that the SCAF, the military leaders, are prepared to turn over completely control of the government to the civilians who have been elected by the people to serve in the parliament, and who will be elected in June, we hope, to serve as president.
It was Jimmy Carter who negotiated a peace deal between Egypt and Israel at Camp David over 3 decades ago. A deal he believes that will benefit from a new Egyptian government.
At that time, the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt has been honored. The rights of the Palestinians have often been ignored. And I would guess that the new government will be much more attentive to Palestinian rights than was the Mubarak regime. In my opinion, this will be a great contribution to the prospects of peace for Israel, for the Palestinians, and for other of their neighbors.
But perhaps Jimmy Carter's most important point, that while some may be surprised or worried by the outcome, for the first time in years, the results fairly reflect the opinions of those who cast their votes. Mike Hanna for Inside Story, Cairo.
Now, just a day after the first round of parliamentary voting finished, delivering Islamists roughly 2/3 of the available seats, that was last month, the Army General Muqta al-Mullah, a member of Egypt's ruling military council, said he didn't think the new parliament would be representative enough to have full authority over forming a government or framing a constitution. He said, and I quote, "What we're seeing is free and fair elections, but they certainly don't represent all sectors of society. We have a lot of other factions, such as workers, farmers, engineers and doctors, who are not in Parliament." So what powers will the new Parliament have, and are there reasons for concern about the Islamists taking the helm of the Egyptian Parliament? To answer these questions, we're joined by our guests in Cairo, Dia Rashwan, head of the al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies, Sherif El-Haggan, Professor of Conflict Resolution and Arbitration at the American University in Cairo, and joining us from the US in Kent, Ohio, Joshua Stacher, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Kent State University. He writes frequently on Egyptian affairs and the Muslim Brotherhood. Welcome to you all. And may I start with you, Mr. Rashwan. Obviously a historic moment with the Islamists taking so much power in Parliament, but is it a good day for Egypt?
I think, yes, Egypt yesterday and today, and we have another 3 days to finish with the third phase of our assembly elections, and I think that it's never happened in our history modern history, at least in the last 60 years, to have such elections. We have many contestations, many differences about and around, political programs, political ideas. But what is common today in Egypt is that we had a good and the clear and net and the clean elections, despite the results, which were not very happy for all the partners. I think that the great winner in this election is the Egyptian people. And I think also is that we have real problems, real obstacles after the finish of the last phase of elections. And I think that the discussions and the negotiations inside the assembly, which started already from a few days ago, will be the real indicator to our political future. These negotiations between the majority party, the Freedom and Justice of Muslim Brotherhood, and the other minority political parties in the parliament will lead the country to its future. Now the negotiations about the Speaker of Majlis al-Shab, of the Assembly, the Vice Speakers, and the chiefs or the heads of the 19 committees in the parliament, the negotiations and how the Muslim brothers will deal with such negotiations, I think, will be the main indicator of the rest of the transitional period, the Commission of the Constitution, and the rest of the elections of the Parliament, of the Shura Council, and even the presidential elections. I think that the next week will be the real gate for Egypt, or to real democracy, or to another revolt, or even another revolution.
OK, well, we'll examine in some detail what's going to happen in the coming week and the coming months. But I want to ask you, Dr. El-Haggan, to tell me, should the world be fearful of the fact the Muslim Brotherhood are going to have the largest number of seats in Al-Noor, the second largest number of seats in Parliament?
I don't think so. I don't believe so. They can only be fearful if they still believe what Mubarak said about the Islamists, so-called Islamists in Egypt. But I don't think people in the world now, nor in Egypt, should believe Mubarak. They overtoppled Mubarak, so why do they still believe him regarding the things he said about the Muslim Brotherhood? This is something that I don't see any reason for. History says that the Muslim Brotherhood, we're talking now, of course, about the Freedom and Justice Party, FJP, have been in parliament in '84 in coalition with the Liberal Party, Al-Wafd, and with the Socialist Islamist Party, Al-Amal. And they, again, were in parliament in '87. They were in parliament despite the harsh attacks and violence used against them in 2005. They obtained 88 seats when all other legal parties obtained 14 seats. They paid a high price for that. And we have never seen them in any of the three occasions calling for dictatorship or supporting the national ruling party or supporting Gamal Mubarak in his plans to rule Egypt, etc. So history says that they always made decisions by shura, which is the equivalent of the word democracy, in my opinion. And a very recent example is 2010 elections. There was a big discussion and inside the Muslim Brotherhood about whether to take part in the elections, and there was a majority vote for, and the decision went on regardless of who voted for and who voted against. So history says that the Muslim Brotherhood was always following shura and democracy, and if it hadn't been, it would have collapsed and not remained for 82 years. Like
OK, let's bring in Joshua Stacher in the US, because your government, the American government, has said it's going to recognise this result. But I would assume there are some in Washington, D.C. who will be a little fearful.
Well, perhaps, but I think those fears are overblown. I think that what we've seen in Egypt is the events of the past 6 months, the past 8 months, have taken a remarkably conservative turn, where we're seeing the sort of establishment of a tacit coalition between the Muslim Brotherhood and the FJP, as well as the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, which is currently still and remains the unaccounted for executive body in Egypt, as well as the Americans, who have been on board with and signed up for what the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces have been, guiding the country. So I believe that we now have a sort of tripartite, sort of sided, alliance between the Muslim Brothers, the Supreme Council, and the United States, all pushing for, increased return to sort of very clear hierarchy and sort of authoritarianism rather than democracy. And I think that these parliamentary elections have formalized this new autocracy.
Mr. Rashwan in Cairo, I'm sure you've been taking the mood on the streets. Tell us why you think the Islamist parties did so well.
We have, as you said, we have two blocks of Islamist parties. We have the Freedom and Justice from side, and we have what we call the Salafist parties in other side, which are three main parties, Nur Party, Al-Asala Party, and Development of Construction and Development Party. The Muslim Brothers having till now, if we speak about the end of the elections, they had already more than 110 seats from the individual seats, which is 168. It means about 70%, or from 65 to 70% from individual seats, plus about 35% from the list seats, which is will be around also 110 seats. It means that the possibility for the Muslim Brothers to arrive till 45 to 47% from the members of the assembly, it's possible now. Beside the Muslim Brothers, the bloc of the Salafist party having till now in the individual seats and list seats around from 22 to 25% from the seats. It means around 125 seats. Till now, it is not sure that the Muslim Brothers will make a coalition with the Salafist parties. The Muslim Brothers, they
could. They don't have to
yes,
make.
I think that
they don't have to make the coalition with the Salafist party. They could choose another party.
I think that the coalition with the Salafists is the last option for the Muslim Brothers today. The first option to start to make a coalition with first the Al-Wafd party, the Liberal Party Al-Wafd, and with the Al-Wafd to make with the other so-called civilian parties such as the Free Egyptians or the Social Democratic Egyptian Party. And I think for the Muslim Brothers it's more easier. It's more what I say, it will be very complicated to join with the Salafists because the Muslim Brothers have many fears from the religious exaggeration of the Salafists, and the Salafists have also their fears from the monopoly of the Muslim Brothers. Their relationships were not in the past very good. They had some electoral coalitions in the last few weeks, but I think that the Muslim Brothers are now searching to have a coalition with the other political civilian or civil parties, also because to assume with them the responsibility of governing Egypt is very heavy now for the Muslim Brothers alone or for all the Islamists together.
Okay, I want to bring up that point then with Dr. Al-Haggan. Do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood will try and form a government straight away? Because there have been some suggestions they may allow the interim government, the one appointed by the generals, to stay on for a bit. What's your view on that?
Well, as Dr. Rashwan said, Muslim Brotherhood don't have, the FJP, don't have a majority. And I don't see why they need a coalition. Coalition against who and to do what? They always declared every minute, every hour that they want mutual agreement in preparing the constitution. With Article 2 regarding applying the principles of Sharia, agreed upon by unanimously in Egypt. I don't see big disagreements on the preparation of the constitution. Regarding the government, I don't see the Muslim Brotherhood ruling Egypt in the government. Maybe there will be some ministers regarding the social justice, education, this type of ministers, but I don't see that they will try to monopolize the ruling. And also, by the way, they are not ruling now. They are 47 or 45% parliament. So they are.
So what do
actually
you think is likely? Do you think the existing Prime Minister, Mr. Ganzouri, the 78-year-old Prime Minister, used to be one of Mubarak's Prime Ministers, he could possibly stay on after this?
I don't think this will happen for long. If he does, it will be a transition, a very quick transition. I don't think the man wants to stay, and if he does, most of the activists in Egypt and all parties are for a new government, a younger government, a revolutionary government that will work for the benefit of the Egyptian citizens.
Joshua Stacher in the United States, in Ohio, do you see the possibility here, as we have these discussions going on, of conflict between the Muslim Brotherhood and the military?
Absolutely. I think there will be instances of conflict, but I think that we have to understand that the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces is continuing to run the country. This is not a transition. You're looking at the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces trying to safeguard their economic interests, the Muslim Brotherhood trying to safeguard their narrow legislative interest and representation interests. And so I think that they're going to form a coalition to kind of be mutually beneficial to one another. So the question of whether, the Prime Minister Ganzouri stays or goes is rather immaterial, because the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces can go get somebody else. This is really going to hinge on who becomes the president of the republic.
Well, hang on a minute. That's not until June. We've got 6 months before that, haven't we? Which is going to be pretty vital.
Yeah, sure. I mean, while the Constitution is going to be really important, and who becomes president, I mean, the fact of the matter is that you could end up with a situation where the Muslim Brotherhood administer the government, but the security services, the security establishment, and the military run the state, which would not be all that different from the Mubarak eras, with the exception of the Islamists not administering the state. You'd have, the sort of NDP.
There's a real potential for conflict, though, here, Mr. Rashwan, in Cairo, isn't there? Because if you're coming up with a new cabinet, are the Muslim Brotherhood going to get a say in who's in charge of the security ministries, the Interior Ministry, and of course the Defence Ministry?
I think that the Muslim Brothers, within the logic that I mentioned, in the last question, the Muslim Brothers will try to have a coalition and a coalition inside the parliament and also in the government. And I don't think that the Muslim Brothers will suggest to have the prime minister, the coming prime minister, from the Muslim Brothers. They will prefer to have a bureaucrat or a technocrat or an economist, an independent one, to lead this government. Concerning the other ministers, I don't think also that the Muslim Brothers will search to have two ministers. They will not search to have Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Muslim Brothers understand very well that it's very heavy now in Egypt to have security and to assume the responsibility of security, not only on face of crimes and the criminal activities, but mainly in face of revolutionary protests and revolts. They will be in a real corner if they had the Ministry of Interior. Also, for the Foreign Affairs Ministry, it also will be very difficult in face of a very critical and sensitive question, such as the Egyptian-Israeli treaty and the relationships with Israel and with the United States of America. Because we know that in the past, for at least 3 decades, the Muslim Brothers were against the treaty, were against the close relationships with the United States of America, Africa, and when they will be in the responsibility in the foreign affairs or in the Ministry of Interior, they will be they have to have decisions.
Okay, Dr. El-Haggan, can I ask you, do you see, Dr. El-Haggan now, can I ask you, do you see potential conflict in the coming days between the Muslim Brotherhood and the military as they try and work out how this is going to work? We're in uncharted waters as far as the constitution is concerned. Or is there, as some suspect, a deal already done under the table?
I don't see any evidence of a deal under the table. I see lots of give and take, not only between Muslim Brotherhood and the army, even between the other parties in the army. Many of the so-called liberals in Egypt pushed to postpone the elections from June to September, from September to November, and the army gave in. So, and now they say that the elections were delayed. So there is conflict. The Egyptians have not practiced democracy for the last 7,000 years. I expect that they need time to learn. But the Egyptians now really want to build Egypt, and most of them are conscious of this and are positive about it, regardless of what is said in the media and what we hear every now and then about deals under the table between this and that. I also don't see a coalition, by the way, a permanent coalition, because that will depend on the issues. For example, I can see socialists and Nasserists standing, supporting the Muslim Brotherhood regarding social justice. Maybe regarding other aspects, the liberals or maybe the capitalists will support the Muslim Brotherhood. And maybe the rest of the group will team against the Muslim Brotherhood in other issues. I don't see a permanent coalition.
Joshua Stacher, do you see other areas of conflict in the coming months, particularly on the issue of corruption and also a possible amnesty for the military at the end of this so that they don't face prosecution just like Mubarak?
Well, I don't think that there are going to be instances of disagreement, but I also think that there's going to be a lot of, give and take, as the previous guest mentioned. However, you have to remember that the Muslim Brotherhood is a very risk-averse organization. They are not going to go to the wall to force the military out of power, and risk all the gains that they've experienced in the past 12 months, which were unthinkable 13 months ago. So I don't believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is going to be, pushing the military very much. In terms of, deals and whatnot, I also do not believe that there are secret deals under any tables. I think that there are power realities that are being played out and everybody respects. And in terms of amnesty to generals, the Muslim Brotherhood is not in a position to make those deals. This is a decision that all the political factions of Egypt must engage in if this is going to work. If the Muslim Brotherhood decides it's going to hand out amnesty to generals, that will never hold up over the long term, and it will forever delay a real transition to civilian government, irrespective if there are civilian presidential elections.
Dr. El-Haggan, what do you see as the biggest challenges for whoever is running Egypt for the next few months? Is it forming the new constitution, or is it dealing with the dire economic situation?
In my opinion, the hectic discussions and the big propaganda about disagreements on constitution, I don't see any problem, and time will prove. I hope that I'm correct. Egyptians want to build Egypt. There is 30 million or above below poverty. There is lots of problems. Egypt has been suffering from major illnesses, cancer and many things for 60, 70 years. And we want to build Egypt and help the Egyptians. Education, industry, traffic, everything needs to be corrected. There is many illnesses, so I don't see big disagreements on the constitution. I can see a conflict on the authority of the army, and I am glad that all Egyptian parties disagreed with Articles 9 and 10 of what is known now as al-Silmi Declaration. So
okay.
There is a unanimous decision
last
here.
Question to Mr. Rashwan. Can I ask you very quickly, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing whoever's running Egypt in the next few days when it's finally finalized?
The short-term challenge is how to have a common constitution between all the Egyptians, and the real handicaps, the real problems for Egypt is the social and the economic problems. We have more than 50% of labor in Egypt are in informal sector. from hand to mouth. And now everything now is stopped. And I think with the time, if the coming government had not real solutions in the economic level, we risk in Egypt to have another wave of not only revolution, but also the anarchic situation.
OK, well, thank you very much. Thanks to our guests in Cairo, dear Rashwan and Sherif El-Haggan, and via Skype from Kent, Ohio, Joshua Stacher. And thanks to you for watching us. You now have the inside story on Egypt's politics. As ever, your feedback is gratefully received. Email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.